Welcome back. All right, before we went on the break, we talked, okay, this is question 42. And we're looking at this question. It says, before colonial rule, Yoruba traditional rulers were appointed by Dash. When I was explaining pre-colonial administration in Yoruba/Old Oyo Empire, we talked about the Council of Oyo Mercy. And we said that they are the king makers. So the ruler, the Alaafin, was appointed by the Council of Oyo Mercy. So, and they are the king makers. The answer here is A. A. 43. When was the emirate system of government introduced in Nigeria? When was the emirate system of government introduced in Nigeria? Now, the answer is C. The answer is C. Please take note of this. Take note of this. Let's continue. Okay, we have entered colonialism. We know we talked about pre-colonial administration in Nigeria. Now we're looking at colonialism. Now, let's begin with a little history about colonialism. It says colonialism may be defined as an imposition of a more developed culture over a less developed one, backed up by expansionist and economic adventure. Now, Lagos was conquered in 51. Lagos became an extension of the British Empire in 1861. That means Lagos became a part of the British colony in 1861. That is what I'm trying to say. So this is like the origin of colonialism in Nigeria. The origin of colonialism in Nigeria, where the British conquered several territories. It says this means the weaker nation is politically dominated and economically exploited by the stronger one. British occupation in Nigeria, or the British conquering Nigeria, is simply for what? Economic means. Economic means. So it says colonialism is sometimes called what? Imperialism. Imperialism. Please take note of this key word. All right. Let's go to the next slide. It says, the first British attempt to set up a formal government in Nigeria was in 1900. By 1900, what is known as Nigeria today was made up of what? 3 separate administrative areas or units. You see, the colony of Lagos. I told you Lagos was conquered in 1851. It became a part of the British colony in 1861. Now you have the protectorate of northern Nigeria, the protectorate of southern Nigeria. Remember in 1914, when we had the amalgamation simply means the joining together of the now northern and southern protectorate to become one Nigeria. It says to form a single colony called Nigeria. Okay. Now, we're looking at another topic, indirect rule. We can't talk about colonialism without talking about indirect rule. Let me put it in the layman's language. Indirect rule simply means the British system of government, on how the British system of government in ruling her colonies, they made use of what? Traditional rulers. They made use of traditional rulers and local chiefs to carry out day-to-day activities. That is what we mean by indirect rule. I'm breaking it down in the simplest English. British using traditional rulers to carry out day-to-day activities in their colonies, making use of traditional rulers or local chiefs. Okay, now we'll look at Okay, now another thing before we go further, Lord Lugard is regarded as the father of indirect rule. So let's look at one or two features. It says indirect rule used the existing traditional system of administration. It was easier for them to do that. Already there was a system on ground. So what the British did was just to use the traditional rulers. The traditional rulers were already used to the people. The people were used to listening to them, paying attention. So they made use of traditional rulers. That is one of the features. Two, it recognized the status of traditional rulers. It recognized the status of traditional rulers. Traditional laws and customs were used. They did not destroy those traditional rules and customs. They made use of them. It was easy for them to administer their colonies. What they now had, they had British officials that supervised the activities of these traditional rulers. They supervised the activities. And also, there was a system of taxation. It was also less expensive. You don't need to have plenty people. You just made use of the traditional rulers and it was easy. It avoided a lot of issues. Then we had taxes. Taxes were collected using the warrant chiefs and all that. Then the native courts were used for administration of justice, carrying out maybe there are issues or what, they made use of the native court. So they didn't destroy the system they met on ground. They made use of it. Okay, question 44. It says, in the organization of British colonial rule in West Africa, which of these was the lowest level of government and administration? Which of these? It wasn't the lieutenant governor, the chief secretary. No, the answer is the district commissioner. The district commissioner. Take note of this. All right. The first British West African country to practice elective principle was dash. I'm going to make emphasis on this. It was Nigeria. Nigeria. Now let's go back to constitutional development in Nigeria. We are looking at the Clifford Constitution of 1923. One of the features of the Clifford Constitution was that it brought elective principle. The Clifford Constitution of 1922, it brought elective principle. It was in the Clifford Constitution that Nigeria had her first political party in 1923, the NNDP, which was formed by Herbert Macaulay. Herbert Macaulay, don't forget. So it brought elective principle and it was in Nigeria. Take note of that. I won't tell you the full meaning of NNDP. I want you to discover it yourself. So that was why I gave the abbreviation. All right, let's go to the next slide. Okay. A system in which the leader exercises absolute power and allows no opposition is called dash. Totalitarianism. You remember? Government yetem. Forms of government. Totalitarianism. Full controls, allows no room for opposition. Controls the political party, the newspaper, name it. So the answer is A, totalitarianism. The following were limitations imposed on traditional rulers under colonial rule, except A, were not permitted to raise armed forces. Yes, they weren't. B, had no power to impose tax. Yes. Had no power to install or dispose a chief. Yes. The answer is D. We are no longer the spiritual heads of the people. This was the answer. Except. Take note of that word. All right. The major 48 says the major motivation of the British colonization of Nigeria was dash. I told you earlier on that colonialism was for economic gains, vested interest, economic interest. The answer is B. It's not to spread religion. It's not westernize Nigeria or protect Nigeria from external attack, but for economic interest. Economic interest. Don't forget this. After the abolition of slave trade, the scrabble for Africa and all that. So it's for economic interest. Take note of this. The native authority was most effective and successful in dash. Now the answer is C. They're talking about indirect rule. The success of indirect rule was majorly successful in northern Nigeria. It was a partial success in western Nigeria, but it was a total failure in eastern Nigeria. In western Nigeria, it was a partial success. In northern Nigeria, it was a total success. In eastern Nigeria, it was a total failure. So the answer is C. Take note. Okay. A popular principle of colonialism in British West Africa was dash. What is the answer? Indirect rule. We've explained it. Indirect rule is your answer. Okay. The Nigerian Council was created by dash. The Nigerian Council was created by dash. Frederick Lugard. Frederick Lugard. Please take note of this. The French policy of assimilation in the West was essentially a form of dash, direct rule. Now let's go back to the French system of rulership, ruling their colonies, and that of the British system of ruling her own colony. The French made use of direct rule. The British made rule of indirect rule. What do we mean? The French did not make use of traditional rulers. No, they did not make use of traditional rulers. Take note. So it was direct rule. One reason for the adoption of indirect rule in British West Africa was dash, inadequate finances. They didn't have money to go around, so they made use of traditional rulers. So C is your answer. I told you it was a very cheap and inexpensive system of administration. Very cheap and affordable. So the answer is C. The pre-colonial Igbo political system was largely dash, Republican. It was Republican. So the people aired their opinion. The people aired their opinion. It was what we call village democracy. Village democracy or village assembly. So A is your answer. Okay, it says acculturation in colonial administration was associated with dash. French policy of assimilation. What did the French do? They made sure that their colonies had the same status like them in France. So that is it, acculturation. So the answer is A. A. Your answer is not A, not French policy of association. All right, we're going for another break. We'll be back shortly. Take care.